On November 30, S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 Heart of Chernobyl received the most anticipated game of 2024 award from PC Gamer. For the occasion, the CEO of GSC Game World appeared on the event, where he shared a message for the fans. I encourage you to watch it if you haven't yet, but basically, he explained how the passion of the community, as well as the resilience of his people, were decisive in developing this hugely ambitious game in the face of all the hostile conditions we know of. Then they dropped a new story trailer called Strider. In the first part of the video, we'll go over each scene of the trailer to look at the details, but without going too deep into the story and theories linked with Strider and the Monolith. That is because we need to have seen the entire thing to start connecting all the dots, which we will attempt to do in the second part of the video. This is the man known as Strider, a fan-favorite character who already appeared in Call of Pripyat. He was a former Monolith member, and here he still wears his Monolith suit, which we can admire in its full glory. Although we can see the lack of a faction badge on his shoulder. Strider approaches the main protagonist, Skif, revealing that his good luck charm is an empty shell which he keeps around his neck.
You asked me about my good luck charm. Remember? It's an empty shell.
It is obvious that both men know each other and share some sort of connection, but more on that later on. In the next scene, Skif is being briefed by Colonel Korshunov, the leader of the Ward faction. He seems quite pissed, questioning Skif's or someone else's behavior.
Decided to play soldier? With me?
Perhaps it has something to do with what happened to his men in the Come To Me trailer.
My men are still lying out there, and I can't even bury them.
And it's possible the person Korshunov is angry at is the culprit his faction is looking for.
Don't want the innocent to suffer? Then help me find the culprit.
Either way, Korshunov continues by explaining what he wants from our protagonist.
Dmitri and I were just discussing a certain puzzle we found in the zone. But we can't quite seem to get all the pieces to fit. Maybe you can figure it out.
I wonder what kind of puzzle he's talking about. It could be an anomaly or anomalous field that they are trying to study or go through, since we know arch anomalies will present new challenges to solve, kinda like the Oasis space loop perhaps. Or it could be something completely different, who knows. Korshunov also mentioned a character named Dmitro. We still don't know who that is, but I think it might be this guy. All while talking, Korshunov is disassembling an AKS-74, showcasing great speed and dexterity while doing so. I'm not sure why he does it, maybe it's his own way to relieve stress or something, but it establishes that the character is not messing around and knows his stuff when it comes to guns, a good quality to have when you are the leader of a group acting like a police force within the zone. At the end, Korshunov throws the weapon to Skif, who catches it. As he looks down, we can notice the pretty cool carpet and the camouflage on the AK. Indeed, this seems to be our first look at a weapon with camo in S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, and it is possible this is what the weapon skins announced a while ago will look like. The scene takes place in some derelict room typical of what you can find in the zone. On the table, we have the UDP compact pistol, a large PDA, and a radio just like the one from Shadow of Chernobyl. Its screen displays the number 15.2, which could be a frequency or a channel. Back to Strider. He removed his good luck charm, showing it to Skif and explaining the meaning it holds to him.
It reminded me that we used to be puppets.
He's obviously referencing the fact that Monolith members were brainwashed against their will. Then, psychologically controlled and used as meat shields and servants by whoever was behind the monolith device. Immediately after, we are shown an interesting room, dark and decrepit, typical of the laboratories and facilities within the zone where highly questionable experiments took place. There is a large panel of screens quickly flashing black and white. In front of it, a chair with straps for the arms and the legs, a collar and a weird apparatus where cables converge towards the head. On both sides, large machines looking like megaphones or satellite dishes. I think there is absolutely no doubt that this is a brainwashing room which was used to convert stalkers into monolith fanatics. The screens remind of the TVs from Clear Sky's ending scene, where we can see S.T.A.L.K.E.R prior to becoming a mind-controlled agent with the S.T.A.L.K.E.R tattoo. The device on the chair is clearly designed to directly affect the brain of the victim, and the large machines on the sides look a lot like the emitters from Lab X-18, which were utilized to cast emissions onto various creatures, effectively creating some of the mutants. The exact nature of such emissions, including the psi emissions used to affect people's minds, is a whole other topic on its own, which I will not talk about in detail right now, so let's get back to the trailer. During the scene, a character named Faust, according to the subtitles, is speaking.
I took just one awkward step, and my whole world plunged into darkness.
It is speculated that Faust is the blind monolith man from the Come To Me trailer. We don't really know how it happened, but he lost his sight, which exactly fits his world plunging into darkness. Furthermore, just like all the other monolithians, the blind guy was brainwashed, so it makes sense for him to speak over this sequence. However, there is a much deeper theory about Faust and this scene, which we will present later in the video. Then Skif apologizes to Strider, who responds with a nervous laughter.
I'm sorry, Strider.
We don't know exactly what Skif did and why he regrets it, though we will speculate about it in a few. Interestingly, we can hear distant whispers during this scene. It could be a reminder of the psi emissions and the voice of the monolith. We are now shown a flashback from Strider's perspective, from when he was still a monolith. Through the scope, we see military personnel engaged in combat with monolith forces. The middle guy looks like a radio operator. He's shooting a PMM pistol. Close to him there is a military stalker equipped with a Kalashnikov and 2 RPG rockets strapped to his back. The third soldier is laying dead on the ground, with an AS-Val sticking out. Then we got 2 monolith casualties, with one that used a Saiga 12 shotgun. So far it's all weapons we already knew were going to be in the game. Afterwards, the broader context of this scene is revealed.
That was the day the psi fields were turned off. Suddenly, the voice of Monolith was gone.
Strider was on the roof of the CNPP, defending Monolith territory from a military attack. The day the psi fields were turned off most likely refers to the time S.T.A.L.K.E.R disabled the Brain Scorcher, the psi antennas preventing anyone getting too close to the center of the zone without being brainwashed or turned into mindless zombies. Therefore, it is pretty much confirmed that this sequence takes place during Operation Monolith, the military assault at the power plant seen near the end of Shadow of Chernobyl. What's more, this would actually happen at the beginning of the battle, since the blowout is not brewing just yet. On a side note, it's interesting how Strider pronounces psi field, unlike most people I know who either say psi field or psi field. Ultimately, we all understand what it refers to. At the beginning of the scene we can spot an RPG with a crate of rockets, along with tons of ammunition boxes, and the Groza assault rifle, which we had yet to see in S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 materials. It looks like the monolith constructed some additional fortifications on top of the CNPP's main building, as it is normally completely flat and was even depicted that way in Shadow of Chernobyl. Strider seems to be equipped with an SVD sniper rifle, though in Call of Pripyat he appeared with an SVU instead. But like all stalkers, a marksman can use different weapons and change it during his stay in the zone, so there is nothing wrong with that. Just like in Shadow of Chernobyl, the power plant is attacked by helicopters, and we see a Monolithian RPG user expertly shoot one down. Such a score seems very unlikely, however it is possible the stalker's accuracy was guided by the monolith. Indeed, Monolithians often act almost like machines during combat as a result of their psychological programming, and this RPG user is no different. Another detail on the roof, the heads on spikes that were also present in Shadow of Chernobyl and Clear Sky around monolith-controlled areas. One even still has the classic S.T.A.L.K.E.R 08 helmet with goggles. From the rooftop, we get a pretty nice view of the zone. On the left side, the cooling towers for the never-finished reactors 5 and 6, which we already saw in another rooftop scene from the E3 gameplay trailer. In both pictures we could also spot the Duga radar in the distance. And now from Strider's perspective, we even get a glimpse at the Brain Scorcher. We could spend a lot of time speculating about how the locations in S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 will be organized, but I don't think it's the point of this trailer, so let's move on. Strider shares with Skif how he experienced his brutal disconnection to the monolith.
I felt as if I was awakening from a years-long coma.
Back to his memory, Strider takes position and aims at the enemy, a military soldier firing his AK in front of a broken down BTR.
Through the scope, we saw the body of an unknown soldier fall.
It's almost as if Strider did not really want to do this, but his monolith instincts kicked in despite the Psyfield's disconnection. That may be when he started to realize they had been puppets all along, as he witnesses the bloody massacre with two other dead men, a Monolithian and an army soldier. In the next scene, we find ourselves in a completely different setting. There, the character known as Dalin explains his thoughts to Skif.
We had a simple choice. Sit back and just wait for another super emission, or take a chance and get control of the anomalous energy.
In order to understand what is going on, we need to remember that Dr. Dalin is the head of the S.T.A.L.K.E.R, the Scientific Institute for Research in the Chernobyl anomalous area, whom we previously heard in the Enter the Zone trailer.
The zone reveals a whole new world. We can stick with the old one, fearing change. But tell me, do you want our descendants to remember us as cowards? Or as those who dared to venture forward to a new, better humanity?
We understand that Dalin is an opportunist, whose goal is to study the zone in order to make scientific discoveries that will benefit humanity. An honorable quest, though it obviously involves some risks, and perhaps the true intentions of the S.T.A.L.K.E.R are much more sinister than what is shown on the surface. Either way, in this new sequence we discovered how Dalin looks like, impeccable in his suit, which seems completely out of place for the zone. Furthermore, Dalin mentioned a super emission, a phenomenon that was first presented in Clear Sky. In this game, we learned that super emissions are extremely powerful versions of the blowouts, which, unlike normal emissions, happen when something breaks the balance of the zone. In Clear Sky, this super blowout happened because S.T.A.L.K.E.R managed to reach the center of the zone and get out alive. Also, super emissions greatly affect the landscape of the zone, reshaping the spatial distribution of anomalies and the properties of artifacts. It sounds like we will be getting super emissions in S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, which may be an indication that the zone is getting out of hand. Moreover, Dalin spoke about his plan to
get control of the anomalous energy.
This could mean trying to contain the emissions in order to stop the zone from provoking a much bigger disaster, kinda like what the Clear Sky faction attempted. It could also mean to harvest the energy produced by anomalies, an interesting prospect in the international context of tensions about energy and resources. After all, Professor Sakharov was already studying electricity production from the Moonlight artifact back in Shadow of Chernobyl. Scientific operation within the zone was always a strong theme of the S.T.A.L.K.E.R games, and it seems it will be back in force in the new entry, along with its baggage of ethical decisions to make. I saw a lot of people remark that the location of the scene looks way too clean for the zone, and I agree, but it does not mean it makes no sense in the game. Indeed, Dr. Dalin mentioned that the S.T.A.L.K.E.R is
the most advanced institution in human history.
I believe that the Institute is a large endeavor, a common effort from all the nations to put resources together and study the zone. Besides, S.T.A.L.K.E.R always had some elements of sci-fi and high technology, brought by years of scientific research in the zone. Therefore, it makes perfect sense for the S.T.A.L.K.E.R facilities to look that good, slightly futuristic even. Most likely the Institute building will be located at the edge of the zone, where the lack of desolation and dangers will prevent it turning into another rusty bunker. Back to Strider, who now holds his good luck charm in front of Skif. He says,
Only I didn't choose that path. Unlike you.
Then gives the empty shell to our protagonist and turns away, abandoning him in this dark place. As we look down, we can notice the camouflage suit worn by Skif, with a pattern reminding of either the Freedom or military factions. To me, it looks like the camo seen on the arms of Army Bullet armor. This led some to speculate that Skif might have been a soldier before becoming a monolith, and possibly he even took part in the assault at the CNPP, where he was captured and converted. About the location, many believe it could be the laboratory under the Brain Scorcher, a very symbolic place for the monolith people. The walkway does kinda look like it, but it's not exactly the same, though it's still possible the area was reworked in the new game. The most interesting thing I saw, however, is the fact that Skif seems to be trapped into a metallic tube-like structure very similar to those from Laboratory X-16. It is clear such devices were made to fit a human inside, and there are emitters around the head similar to those used for brainwashing. I always suspected these machines to have created some of the humanoid mutants, possibly the controllers, though it could also be utilized for reprogramming the victim's brain. Alright, now that we talked about what happened in the trailer and what was seen, it's time to dive into theories. In order to do so, we need to start from the beginning. I am sure many of you already know who Strider is, but I still think it is important to explain the whole context in order to dive as deep as we can into this trailer. In Call of Pripyat, Strider was found in the vicinity of the Jupiter factory, where he and the rest of his squad camped. They were former fanatics from the Monolith faction who lost their link to their godlike entity, thus becoming free from the brainwashing. Here is how Strider described the situation back then. We don't remember how we got here. I remember that we were a Monolith squad. We had this burning desire to reach the center of the zone. That's where the Monolith is. It's a meteor that brought the beginnings of new life from other planets. I remember reaching the CNPP together, and then it's all fragmented. I remember a bright light, cosmic cold, and a clear voice. Everything was just perfect. I don't remember what that voice ordered me to do. Several years of my life just gone. The boys are the same. We don't know what to do. In the beginning, the Monolith faction was not composed of brainwashed fanatics defending the center of the zone with their lives. It was simply stalkers who believed in a monolith located at the power plant, which came from space and responsible for the creation of the zone. They traveled to the CNPP to meet with the monolith, only they were wrong about what it really was. For we know from S.T.A.L.K.E.R's discoveries that the monolith was only an illusion, a controlling device created by the real people behind the birth of the zone in order to lure stalkers. Thus the Monolithians fell into the trap and were brainwashed, turned into devoted soldiers tasked to protect the zone's secrets at all costs. However, the mind control was eventually broken when the Psy emissions were turned off, as Strider explained in the trailer. He did not seem to remember that part back in Call of Pripyat, so it is likely that former Monolithians got more of their memory back as time passed, in the form of fragments and dreams in a similar fashion to the Marked One after being turned into an agent. Let's put the scenes with Strider and his luck charm back to back, shall we?
You asked me about my good luck charm. Remember? It's an empty shell. It reminded me that we used to be puppets. Only I didn't choose that path. Unlike you.
Here it is implied that Skif, on the contrary to Strider, deliberately chose to be brainwashed by the monolith, a decision he seems to deeply regret.
I'm sorry, Strider.
If this location is indeed the Brain Sculpture lab, it is possible Skif tried to turn it back on. In fact, the whole scene appears quite emotional, as Strider is crying, in spite of being a very tough person. Indeed, he, like many of his comrades, went through a lot. After the influence of the monolith was gone, its worshippers were lost, but also finally free from the Psy emissions. In Call of Pripyat, we could witness their distress.
O Monolith, we do not hear you. Why have you left us, O Monolith?
Despite the loss, it seems most of them continued to believe in their god, and kept on fighting while praying for its return. People like Strider, though, went a different way. According to the good ending of Call of Pripyat, Strider managed to survive. With the help of Major S.T.A.L.K.E.R, he would first enlist into either duty or freedom, then quit and follow S.T.A.L.K.E.R to Pripyat, pursuing his quest to find out more about what happened to him and his former monolith friends. During the expedition, the team even encountered hostile monolith troops, and Strider did not hesitate to engage them.
Snipers! They're mine.
Freed from the brainwashing, Strider finally chose his own path, as he would go on to recruit more members to his cause. We already knew Strider was going to appear in S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 thanks to the IRG, which also revealed his group of followers will be called Noon. They are speculated to be the group facing the blind monolith man, probably Faust, in the Come To Me trailer. That scene illustrated the divide within the monolith faction after the mind control vanished. On the left and with Faust stand those who did not accept they could have been duped and continue to worship the monolith. On the right and with Strider stand those who realized what had happened and are now looking to find a new way in life. Skif stood in the middle, but with the new information revealed by Strider, it seems we now know what side he chose. It is possible this choice will be up to the player though. We know that the story will be branching in different ways depending on the actions and decisions of the player, which could mean this is only one of the many possibilities. Now I would like to come back to Faust. Assuming he is in fact the blind monolith man, he does have a necklace just like Strider, except it's a stone instead of an empty shell. I wonder if there is anything important hidden behind this symbolism. Also, GSC used one of his quotes in the description of the trailer. "You cannot kill God, just as you cannot get rid of the sky up above." But their god was turned off. Hundreds were released from Sinister Bliss, but how many of them were asking for it? We've brought a few pieces to fit into your puzzle, stalkers. Let's try to put the pieces together then. Here it is implied that some monolithians did not want to be released from their brainwashed state, as they felt great while under the influence of the monolith. I believe Faust is one of them, their leader in fact, who resorted to purposefully subjecting himself to the Psy-missions in an attempt to establish connection with the monolith again. You see, the brainwashing room shown when Faust is speaking does not seem very efficient at producing a large number of monolithians, since there is only one chair for so many screens. Furthermore, the right arm of the chair is equipped with a strange red button. At first I was confused about it. Why would they put a button for the victim to use? Then someone came up with this theory, that this is actually a room used by people like Faust to inflict the brainwashing process on themselves, which they can control directly from their chair with this button. All of this done in a desperate quest to hear the voice of the monolith once again. As Strider pointed out, it's even possible Skif took part in this. On top of that, another person mentioned something very interesting about the name S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2. In my previous video, I shared my theory that S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 could indicate a new agent with the S.T.A.L.K.E.R tattoo. However, in the design document for Anarchy Cell, the game that would become Clear Sky, it is revealed that S.T.A.L.K.E.R is not just the acronym used for the agents, but more so the name of the brainwashing program that creates them. What if the Monolith faction led by Faust will come up with a new mind control program in the game called S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2? Time will tell. To conclude, this trailer confirmed the fact that S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 will feature a heavy focus on the story and narration. I see people who think this is a bad thing because it will take away from the rest of the game experience. To that I answer, no. We are getting all this amazing plot on top of everything else, being the great gameplay, freedom of exploration, and all the stuff we've come to love about the franchise. The original trilogy did have interesting characters, but almost none were really fleshed out or had complete story arcs. Therefore, I am very excited to see how this aspect improved in S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2. After all, GSC wrote the following about the Strider trailer. The tough story of a person who got lost in his own mind. One of the hundreds of stories that will be told during your warm and cozy stay in the Chernobyl anomalous zone. We can't wait to tell you all of them, and want to thank you for your willingness to listen and be part of the journey.